Pragati Vichar Literature Festival 2023, organized by Frontiers Media, and this year's theme is Taking Humanity Forward. So today we all are present here to celebrate the love for literature and discuss the pivotal subject matters prevailing in our society and establish engaging conversation with your favorite author and with the audience as well. So today's session topic is, today's session theme is children and storytelling. And for this special theme, today we have Mr. Shubha Vilas and Ms. Sia Gupta on panel today. And we're immensely glad to have both of you on board for the PVLF 2023. Thank you. So under the session theme, you are not audible.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
I said thank you. I'm very grateful to be here on this platform.
So under the session theme, the children and storytelling, our topic is retelling of ancient Indian epics from different generations. And I feel like that Sia is 14 years old and you have a quite an experience and you are, very elder than Sia. And I'm hoping that this session we will get, perspectives from the different generation today. So looking forward to the session. So I would like to first I'll start with the introduction. So first, Shubha Vilas. Shubha Vilas has a bachelor engineering degree in electronics and telecommunication along with LLB, specializing in intellectual property law. Her career began with the Tata Group and later he moved to an international law firm in Bangalore. He then decided to serve the society at large by donning various hats. So he's a writer, motivational speaker, lifestyle coach, advocate for the God's conscious lifestyle, a spirituality aware and value centric way of living in today's scientific oriented, technology driven urban world. And he has recently published his book Vehicles of Gods, Ganesha and Mushika the Mouse. So welcome, sir. And last but not the least, we have Sia Gupta on panel. 14-year-old girl, Sia Gupta is currently studying in grade 7 in modern school, New Delhi, deeply interested in poetry, and she has wrote her first book titled The Magical World of Poems at the age of 8. She wrote the Tales in Rhyme and series based on the popular tales of Aladdin. Cinderella, Snow White, and Seven Drafts, and The Beauty and the Beast. When she was 9 years old, she has written all these books when she was 9 years old. The series won at the Federation of Indian Publisher Award with a keen interest in Indian mythology. She wrote the Mahabharata in rhyme at the age of 10. With a desire to spread the joy of reading and writing among her peers, she has presented 10 tips to publish at 10, a 45-minute interactive event to grade 4 and 5 students across various schools. She is an avid reader and her favorite genre are epic poetry and fantasy fiction. She also plays pianos and loves to dance and many more things. So this is way too much and you are just a 14-year-old girl. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Sia.
Thank you for such a kind introduction. I'm really looking forward to learning from Mr. Shubha Vilas and interacting with all.
So, Shubha sir, your book, The Vehicles of Gods, Ganesh and Mushika the Mouse. What was the notion behind the composing the lesser known tale to the audience?
So usually, if you look at the stories of the Indian scriptures, the gods and the personalities who are the key characters in many of these scriptures get all the attention. But the vehicles whom they are mounting on, like Mushika the mouse, or Airavat the elephant, or Parvani the peacock of Kartikeya, etc., they hardly get any mention. So I felt, dedicating books to these personalities also is a very special way of speaking about the relevance of even the smaller known, lesser known personalities in these scriptures. And interestingly, if you look at all these vehicles that we are speaking about, each of them have names, each of them have a personality of their own, each of them have special stories of their own, each of them have solid contributions of their own. which goes to show that in the Vedic culture, um, everything and everyone is respected. Even the animals are respected as much as human beings would be respected. And therefore, I felt a series like this will help children learn to respect even animals, learn to respect even people who are not so famous or popular or not so well known, but learn to look at certain things even in these aspects. That was the whole thought process behind the series.
Thank you. So I would like to know, is this book is for the with what kind of age group that you have written this book, or maybe
This
it can be
series
by
works
anything?
from 7-year-old all the way till 10, 12-year-olds also. Of
Okay.
course, smaller than seven, the parents would have to read the stories to them. And even the kids who are smaller than seven love the pictures, love the illustrations, and of course, love the stories also being told to them.
Yeah, okay, quite amazing. So moving ahead, Sia Gupta, that you have, written a book, the Mahabharata in rhyme, which is illustrated, right? So what inspired you to recraft the timeless epic of Mahabharata?
Okay, so firstly, the Mahabharata is part of our culture. It has been told by generations before us and it will undoubtedly be told for generations after. The Mahabharata is a vital part of our history and it itself, including with mythology, plays an important part in shaping the contemporary world and in keeping people in light with humanity. The Mahabharata is something which is not just a story, but it represents the ideals and values of courage and sacrifice, love and hate, and war and peace. And it is these ideals I hoped to tell children about and tell the entire world about. What inspired me to personally recraft it was firstly that I loved the story. I loved reading about it. I read numerous versions and I watched different shows about it. And I was enamored by the entire story. And secondly, did you know that the Mahabharata was originally written in Sanskrit in couplets, in rhyme? But it's never been written in English in rhyme. And I thought it was my duty, my dharma, a topic which is vastly talked about in the Mahabharata. I thought it was my dharma to write this book for children all over the world.
Thank you, Sia. So, Shubha sir, what would you like to say that, Sia has written this book, the Mahabharata, and I mean, you have a quite an experience in the mythology because you have written several books on, Indian epics. So, yeah.
I really appreciate what Sia is doing, and I really wish that this reaches to a lot more people. And she continues the good work of representing the Indian Dharma in the right way through poem, poetry, through stories, and through her books. Congratulations, Sia, and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, sir.
So, such kind of books teaches us so many lessons and values. So, what values and lessons do you think such tales imbibe, mythology tales that you guys have written, tales imbibe in young readers? So, I would like to start with Sia.
Okay, so in young readers, as I mentioned earlier, all of these values of jealousy, greed, love, hate, war, peace, these are all things that are present in current society, right? And I feel by writing about such things in a simpler language and in a story form, it teaches children especially about the real world, and it gives them a notion of an idealistic world as well, so that they can strive towards such a place. It teaches them about kindness to others. The Mahabharata especially teaches them about duty. It teaches them about generosity as taken by Karn. It teaches them about being righteous as taken by Yudhishthir. It teaches them an entire world of things, and I think introducing them to that world is really important. So that's why I wrote it.
Shubha, so what's your take on this?
There are multiple layers of any of the stories that are mentioned in our scriptures. The outermost layer is the story itself. But within that story is profound lessons that we can learn from the story, and much deeper than the lessons, which is for human at a human level is a deeply spiritual insight into the story. All the three are relevant for three different audiences. There is a very beautiful verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam that says that these stories, like the Mahabharata, are entertainment for the common man. They are enlightenment for someone who's seeking knowledge. And they are thoroughly spiritually nourishing someone who is looking for spiritual upliftment. So, whichever level you are, it will work. So, the way I present the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and all our scriptures is try to touch people who are at all the three layers. I write stories that are exciting and very, very uh, beautifully written narratives. But along with that, I write life lessons that are applicable to a common man. But in addition to that, I write deeper spiritual truths and insights that any sadhaka, any spiritual aspirant will love to apply and imbibe on their lives.
Thank you so much. So I have one question that when you start doing, retelling these stories, the ancient epics, so when you are getting familiar with the Mahabharata and the other stuff that taking you towards spirituality. So then, what was in your mind that why do you want to take? Why did you choose this path? Well, choose this path of spirituality.
I chose this path because I realized that there is a lot that our scriptures can offer the world. And unfortunately, it has not got the due recognition that it deserves. India is a land of knowledge. People from all over the world came to India thousands of years back looking for uh, not the spices of India, not the gold of India, not so much the riches that India has to offer, but the knowledge that India has to offer. Unfortunately, after the invasions that happened so many decades and so many centuries, people did get a lot of gold. People did get a lot of spices. People got a lot of riches, but they unfortunately forgot to take the most important part of what India has to offer, which is the knowledge bank. And instead of taking it, they burnt the Nalanda University, which lasted for like so many years. The, the university burned for 1 year. You can imagine how much knowledge and how many books were there in that university. So, what people forgot to take from India, I'm writing books and I'm doing courses, teaching all over the world, helping people access this knowledge. I recently shared a lecture at University of Princeton and at Stanford in US. And these are high seats of learning in the world today. But when I spoke from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, people loved it. And people really appreciated the wisdom that is hidden in these scriptures. And I realized that's exactly what I want to do. First of all, spirituality simply means you imbibe it yourself and then you share it. It's called achar, then prachar. So that means it's not just that you keep talking about it, you should also live a life based on it. I mean, anyone can talk about these books, isn't it? Anyone can write any of these books. The question is, do you live by them? If you live by them, then there is impact in what you teach, in what you write. But if you don't live by them, it is just another set of books that won't make impact in people's lives. So I strongly feel that unless and until I practice spirituality myself, I don't have the right to share it and teach it to others. And it's not just a way of making money. It's not just a way of getting fame. It's a lifestyle. And unless and until you make these teachings a part of your life, you have no right to share these teachings with them. And that's exactly what I strongly believe in. Anyone who writes on the Mahabharata, Ramayana, any of our scriptures, the question simply that they have to ask is, how much do you live by them? And if you don't live by them, do you really have the rights to share this knowledge with the world? So I think this fundamental thought that drove me towards first practicing spirituality myself and then sharing it with the world.
I must say that you have such a beautiful thought and you are doing a tremendous job that, making people aware about our culture, about the ancient epics. So yeah, thank you, sir. And we need people like in our society. So moving ahead, Sia, you have set quite an example by embarking on your writing journey from such a young age. How can we promote writing among young children and set them up for a career in the writing?
Okay, so firstly, like you mentioned in my introduction, I went to a few schools and did this presentation 10 tips to publish a 10 and also War and Peace learnings from the Mahabharat. So in both of my presentations, I highlighted a few important things that I believe will set children up to write. Firstly, reading. Reading is something which I feel goes hand in hand with writing. I have this saying that reading is like breathing in and writing is like breathing out. They go together. So I feel like it's very important for children to at least try to read something new every day other than their school books and textbooks, etc. It's important for them to try and like a short story, even a poem every day or every now and then. And another thing to inspire people to write and to set them up for a career in writing, they should try to publish whenever they can. So, for me personally, I published in my school magazine, in small newspapers here and there, and every time it inspired me so much and it pushed me to write more, which is something. And okay, getting back to the how they should write thing, before getting it published, obviously, I feel like to write, you need to have imagination as well as research. You have to be able to have, you should be able to think creatively, which you can do after you read and get inspired to write more. And you can also do with research. For my Mahabharat, personally, I read so many different versions, including Devdutt Patnayak's and Namita Gokhale's, etc. And I also watched the old Hindi series, the one that was made, I think, like 30 years ago. And I watched that and I read different versions in Hindi, English, Sanskrit, etc. So I think that research really led me to have a better understanding of the Mahabharat. So to all children out there who want to write, I feel like everyone should try to write at least once in their lifetime because writing is such a journey. It helps you gain so much confidence and learning and understanding of yourself. And so I feel like you should try to write at least once in your life. And for children who want a career in writing, keep trying. That's the only advice I can offer. Keep trying, read, imagine, and research.
Okay, thank you, Sia. So, Shubha sir, would you like to add something to just Sia said?
You want me to speak something on writing?
Yeah, sure. That how can we, promote our young generation to write more and read more?
So everything is a habit. What you practice, that's what you become good at. If you are, um, if you are so practicing a particular skill again and again and again and again, you excel in that. So if someone wants to write, first one has to practice getting familiar with the idea of books, the idea of reading, the idea of writing. And it's not something that will happen suddenly. It's not that, there are a lot of people who say, I want to write, but they do nothing about practice. They do no practice of reading, they do no practice of writing, they do no practice of uh, getting deeper into the vocabulary of the language, and they do no practice of gaining knowledge. So, first is you practice yourself. So, I would highly advise youngsters to find books that are appealing to them. Don't just read books for the sake of reading. Read books that you love. So there might be a situation where you love only a particular type of writing or a particular style of writing or a particular author. That's fine. Read that particular style or that particular author or that particular genre more and more and more. Get comfortable with the idea of reading. And the more you get comfortable with books, books become your friends. And books actually start talking to you. They start giving you ideas. They start giving you insights. They actually start guiding you and whispering so many things into your ears. And when you become friends with books, you'll realize that all you want to do in your life is be with books. So someone who is a friend of a book actually eventually ends up writing books also.
Again, a very beautiful thought, Shubha sir. Thank you so much. So moving ahead, my next question: what role does mythology play in shaping the contemporary world? So yeah, Mr. Shubha sir, what's your take on this?
First of all, whenever I'm asked this question, I tell people that please don't use the word mythology because the word mythology is a misnomer. It's um, it's introduced to us by the British Indologists, and it is not at all representing what our scriptures have. Our scriptures are called itihas. Itihas means history, and it's very far from myth, from fiction. And the more we consider our scriptures to be mythology, the less we respect them. The more we consider our scriptures to be itihas, to be histories, the more we learn from them. Because fiction usually is for entertainment, and history is for serious development and learning. And and of course, when we start looking at these stories as um, generational classics, as stories that are the biggest stories ever written in the world, that's when we really get serious about learning these histories. I'll just give you a simple thought. The Mahabharata, which is the oldest and the longest novel written in the history of the world, just to give you a mind-boggling figure of the number of characters in this particular novel. Any any of the biggest novels in the history of today's world, which are considered to be classics, how many characters do they have? Maybe 100, maybe 200, maybe 300. I'm going to tell you how many characters are there in the Mahabharata. There is a person who wrote a book called The Who's Who of the Mahabharata. And this person, the entire book is only names of characters and one or two sentences about the characters, the Mahabharata. And you know how many pages his book runs to? His book runs to 250 pages of only the names of characters in the Mahabharata. So you can imagine how many characters are there in the Mahabharata. And for someone to write fiction of this magnitude is impossible. No one in this world can imagine something of this magnitude, and it cannot be mythology, definitely. And therefore, this history needs to be told, and this history needs to be studied. And this history has relevance because every single character in the Mahabharata or the Ramayana, for that matter, they represent personalities of today. They represent psychologies of today. They represent character flaws. They represent character strengths. They represent at so many levels complicated human emotions. And only when we study these stories in this way, we can actually learn how very well to deal with the game of our life. And that's why I call my series as Ramayana the game of life, because it actually helps us to better our game.
Thank you so much, Shubha sir. And yes, you have quite, comprehend the definition of mythology, how and the idea of Mahabharata. And thank you so much. So my next question to Tia, that you have written so many books on fairy tales, right? So do you plan on exploring genres other than the genre of Indian epics and fairy tales in future?
Right. So I have been writing poetry for most of my life because I find it engaging, and I often might find myself thinking in poetry. I love poetry, and but I have an Indian mythology or Indian history, as so aptly said by Sir, is something that I've just recently started to discover, read more about, and enjoy. So I will definitely be trying to take this specific genre forward. But I am also the biggest fan of fantasy because, as Sir said earlier, books are friends, and to me, I find fantasy the most relatable, to be honest, because it's It presents, like the Mahabharata, it presents human emotions, it presents human thoughts in a way that is not directly said. It's something you read through, you understand those human feelings, which is why the Mahabharata is so, it's about humanity. A quote I found in the Mahabharata is that I really liked was, everything in the world is present in the Mahabharata. If it's not in the Mahabharata, it doesn't exist. And I found this so true because everything, all the values of the Mahabharata are present in humanity. And now, to answer your question, that I will be exploring fantasy, but the thing is, there is no such thing as specific genre to me, right? I feel like everything is about, there is no specific different differentiation between science fiction, fantasy. It's all about trying to imbibe humanity into words to express them to other people. So, which is what I've done with the Mahabharata through Indian epics, and which is what I'll be trying to do through my own characters now, hopefully.
And I hope that you keep writing and publish engrossing works that you have, published. So, and also motivate young readers. So, my next question to you again, that Mahabharata in a rhyme, you have incorporated rhythmic verses. So, what entices you the most about the poetry, because it's written in rhythmic?
Right. So, like I said, I love poetry. I feel like I've always read poetry as a child growing up, more than prose even. I grew up reading poetry. I grew up thinking in rhyme, and I find rhyme very appealing and enticing to me. And one thing that I found is that rhyme comes, it engages more with children, to be honest. They understand more, or they find it more appealing when it's in rhyme. They find it easier to understand, and it's more entertaining for them as well. For example, in fact, the reason why I wrote the tales in rhyme is because my sister loved poetry so much, and she loved the fairy tales. She read them at least once a day, and she tried a lot to find these poems in rhyme, but she couldn't find them, so I wrote them for her. And so that's how my journey in rhyme started, and it went on to the Mahabharata, which, like I said, I found that no one had ever written it in English in rhyme, so I decided to take that upon myself. And I hope to continue writing more in rhyme because, like I said, rhyme engages more with children, and it comes very easy for me, to be honest. It's the words, they sound like music, they're rhythmic. It's just beautiful when rhyme comes together. It's like a tapestry being woven from small threads, and it forms a beautiful picture once the rhyming words come in.
Thank you, Sia, and you are such a good sister. So yeah, moving ahead, Shubhasa, do you think the teachings of mythology still hold the same values in the modern age?
Absolutely. In fact, they hold even more value today than ever in the past. In the past, people knew these values very much because these values were a part of the culture, and they were taught in the schools and gurukuls of those times. But today, most education is about knowledge and skills. How much of our education is about values? Hardly anything. And therefore, we have very skilled people, very talented people, but people with hardly any values. And that's why you find the kind of crimes that are happening today, the kind of sad situations that the world is seeing today. It's simply because of the lack of values. Whether it is you look at corporate scams, whether you look at frauds on an individual level, whether you look at uh, massive banking frauds, you look at so many levels of individual and collective failure. They are all simply a result of a society that is valueless. So we may be a society that is very, very advanced, but as far as knowledge and skills is concerned, but it's a disaster as far as values is concerned. Studying our scriptures, it actually is a powerful way of bringing back our values. In fact, the British Indologist Max Muller, when he traveled around the around India. He traveled for 4 years around the length and breadth of India. And after he traveled the length and breadth of India for 4 years, visiting hundreds of towns and villages, he came to a conclusion. And this was like few decades back. Imagine this. He said that India is a land where I found no dishonest man and I found no thief. Imagine this same India a couple of decades back and what it is now. And Max Muller he concluded his finding by saying that, in my opinion, the reason why there are no thieves and dishonest people in India is because everyone studies Ramayana and Mahabharata. And he said, if we have to destroy India, we have to really take over India, we need to destroy people's faith in the Ramayana and Mahabharata. That's exactly what the Britishers did. Simply by changing terminologies. They didn't change the stories of Ramayana. They just made a fiction. And it became irrelevant to Indians because they thought it as fantasy stories. And that's why I'm saying today, more than any time in the past, the values of the Mahabharata and Ramayana teaching us are needed, so much needed to keep the ethos of what India actually should represent, the dharma based living, a lifestyle based on dharmic knowledge and traditions.
So you have discussed Max Muller and his definition about the mythology and Indian epics, and you also introduced that in your lecture that mostly talked about Indian Mahabharata and the Indian culture and heritage. So how does our Indian civilization culture influence the westernization?
How does
Our Indian culture and heritage influence the westernization and our epics? Yeah.
our epics teach us simple living, high thinking?
Okay.
The Western world teaches us simply living, hardly thinking. So most people in the Western world, if you actually travel around, you will find the paradigm of enjoying very, very intense. The paradigm of consumerism, very intense in the entire Western world. The paradigm of living for the moment, forgetting the consequences of our actions, very intense. So, for the Indian thought process, the Vedic culture teaches us to think before we act. It teaches us to understand the theory of karma. It teaches us to be accountable to God. It teaches us to live life based on higher values, higher principles, higher thought processes. It teaches us to live simple lives, minimalistic lives, and of course, which is obviously against the whole idea of consumerism today. But uh, growth happens on a much greater scale when people consume less. You actually see today uh, just 8% of people in the world are consuming almost 25% of the resources in the world. Very unfair, very unfair way of living. So you actually go to so many of the countries in the West, whether it is America, Europe, or so many other countries, you'll find so much consumerism happening. So much of people are buying things, and when it's little defective, they throw it and buy something else. In India, so in the West, there is no concept of repairing mobile phones. There's no concept of repairing TVs. There's no concept of repairing any of the electronic gadgets. Use it, stops working a little bit, throw it and get something else. But in India, we don't give up on anything. 10 years, 15 years, you use the same product and you keep repairing it and using it, isn't it? Till it just doesn't work. So now, what begins with consumerism in the West changes to what is known as hedonism. Hedonism is simply the same concept of consumerism, use and throw, but in relationships now. So what they do is that they try a relationship, doesn't work, throw and get somebody else into your life. That doesn't work, throw and get somebody else into your life. But in India, there's no concept of throwing. There's no concept of giving up on relationships. We take responsibility for relationships. We take responsibility for relationship for life. So if consumerism has come into India today, very shortly, hedonism is going to follow. And what we see in the West today, broken families, hardly any family structure remaining, is very much going to become a part of India very soon. It is already becoming so. And it's all the more progressive unless and until we really inoculate the mindsets of Indians with the original thought process that is there in the Ramayana, Mahabharata, in our scriptures. And that's when we will learn to go back to our simple living and high thinking philosophy and give up this thought of simply living and hardly thinking philosophy which the West has introduced us to.
I absolutely agree with you, and I'm hoping that you ensure that people will more introduce with our culture and teach something, the moral values that we Indians have. So thank you, Shubha sir. So, so thank you, Sia, and thank you, Shubha sir, for coming today and joining us for this special session. I have learned so much from Shubha sir today, and Sia, you are doing a quite commendable job, writing at a very young age and promoting reading and writing among, the small age of groups. So I'm hoping that you will do the same um, you will gonna do the same in your upcoming years. So all the best for your the bright career, and thank you, Shubha sir, and you will spread awareness of Indian culture and Indian epics. So thank you, and hoping that this session will gonna enlighten our audience and will gonna teach a lot of things about mythology and our retelling of Indian epics and Indian culture. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Very happy and grateful to be here, Mr. All the best, Sia, for your journey ahead.
Thank you. So I really learned a lot from you today, and I have new things to think upon.
Thank you and have a good day. Bye.